The Supreme Court has ruled in favor of a Colorado baker who refused to make a cake for a same-sex wedding because of a religious objection. The decision found that the Colorado Civil Rights Commission, CCRC, showed hostility towards the baker and his religious beliefs, violating religious protection laws in the U.S. The 7-2 decision presented a win for the baker, Jack Phillips, but did not address the broader constitutional questions that the case brought forwards. Supreme Court ruling allows Arkansas law banning medicine abortions. The case stems from a 2012 incident when Masterpiece Cake Shop refused to make a wedding cake for the same-sex couple, but offered to sell them other baked goods like birthday cakes. Following the rejection, the couple approached the CCRC claiming that they were wrongfully discriminated against because of their sexual orientation. Same-sex marriage was not recognized by the state of Colorado at the time. In writing his majority opinion for the court, Justice Anthony Kennedy noted on Monday the peculiar nature of the cause, where free speech is defined in the context of expression through the creation of a customized cake for a ceremony that the baker strongly disagreed with on religious grounds. The freedoms asserted here are both the freedom of speech and the free exercise of religion. The free speech aspect of this case is difficult, for few persons who have seen a beautiful wedding cake might have thought of its creation as an exercise of protected speech. Mr. Kennedy wrote, "This is an instructive example, however, for the proposition that the application of constitutional freedoms in new contexts can deepen our understanding of their meaning." A rescue worker carries a child covered with ash after a volcano erupted violently in El Rodeo, Guatemala. Volcán de Fuego, whose name means volcano of fire, spewed an 8 kilometers (5-mile) stream of red-hot lava and belched a thick plume of black smoke and ash that rained onto the capital and other regions. Dozens were killed across 3 villages. A recycler drags a huge bag of paper sorted for recycling past a heap of non-recyclable material at Richmond Sanitary Landfill site in the industrial city of Bulawayo. Plastic waste remains a challenging waste management issue due to its non-biodegradable nature. If not managed properly, plastic ends up as litter, polluting waterways, wetlands and storm drains, causing flash flooding around Zimbabwe's cities and towns. Urban and rural areas are fighting the continuous battle against a scourge of plastic litter. On June 5, 2018, the United Nations marked the World Environment Day, which plastic pollution is the main theme this year. Palestinian mourners carry the body of 21-year-old medical volunteer Raisin El-Nayar during her funeral after she was shot dead by Israeli soldiers near the Gaza border fence on June 1, in another day of protests and violence. She was shot near Khan Yunis in the south of the territory, Health Ministry spokesman Ashraf Al-Qudra said, bringing the toll of Gazans killed by Israeli fire since the end of March to 123. Spain's new Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez poses after a vote on a no-confidence motion at the Spanish Parliament in Madrid. Spain's parliament ousted Prime Minister Mariano Rajoy in a no-confidence vote sparked by fury over his party's corruption woes, with his socialist arch-rival Pedro Sanchez automatically taking over. Zinedine Zidane looks on after a press conference to announce his resignation as manager from Real Madrid. He confirmed he was leaving the Spanish Giants, just days after winning the Champions League for the 3rd year in a row. A worker cleans up the millionaire migrants' makeshift camp along the Canal de Saint-Denis near Porte de la Villette, northern Paris, following its evacuation on May 30. More than 1,000 migrants and refugees were evacuated early in the morning from the camp that had been set up for several weeks along the canal. Police and ambulances are seen at the site where a gunman shot dead 3 people, 2 of them policemen, before being killed by elite officers, in the eastern Belgian city of Liege. French President Emmanuel Macron meets with Mamadou Gassama, 22, from Mali, at the presidential Élysée Palace in Paris. Gassama, living illegally in France, is being honored by Macron for scaling an apartment building over the weekend to save a 4-year-old child dangling from a 5th-floor balcony. Migrants wait to disembark from the ship Aquarius in the Sicilian harbor of Catania, Italy. Ireland awaits the official result of a referendum that could end the country's ban on abortion. Co-director of Together for Yes L.B. Smith speaks to the media after exit polls suggested victory for the Yes campaign. Film producer Harvey Weinstein arrives at the first precinct in Manhattan where he turned himself into New York police for sexual misconduct charges. Russian President Vladimir Putin meets with his French counterpart Emmanuel Macron at the Constantine Palace in Strelna, outside St. Petersburg, on May 24, 2018. People protest outage to the Tamil Nadu House after at least 10 people were killed when police fired on protesters seeking closure of plant on environmental grounds in town of Thoothukudi in southern state of Tamil Nadu, in New Delhi. People demonstrate in Paris during a nationwide day protest by French public sector employees and public servants against the overhauls proposed by French President Emmanuel Macron, calling them an attack by the centrist leader against civil services as well as their economic security. Newly appointed Catalan President Quim Torra arrives to visit jailed Catalan separatist politicians at the Extremadura jail near Madrid. Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro casts his vote during the presidential elections in Caracas. Maduro was seeking a second term in power. Channelized lava emerges on Kilauea volcano's Lower East Rift zone on Hawaii. The USGS said on its website that a fast-moving Tahoe lava flow that emerged from Fissure 20 continues to flow southeast, with the quickest of 3 lobes progressing at 230 yards (210 meters) per hour. Santa Fe High School student Dakota Schrader is comforted by her mother Susan Davidson following a shooting at the school in Texas. Schrader said her friend was shot in the incident. Multiple people have been killed. French President Emmanuel Macron, British Prime Minister Theresa May and German Chancellor Angela Merkel meeting during the EU Western Balkans Summit in Sofia, Bulgaria. People hold flags with the state coat of arms of Russia as they drive along a bridge, which was constructed to connect the Russian mainland with the Crimean Peninsula across the Kerch Strait. Palestinians run away from tear gas shot at them by Israeli forces during a protest in Ramallah, in the occupied West Bank. A Palestinian demonstrator runs during a protest against the U.S. Embassy move to Jerusalem and ahead of the 70th anniversary of the Nakba at the Israel-Gaza border. A bullet hole on the window of a cafe in Paris, the day after a knifeman killed 1 man and wounded 4 other people before being shot dead by police. Germany's Chancellor Angela Merkel looks on after receiving the Lamp of Peace, the Nobel Catholic Award for her work of conciliation for the peaceful cohabitation of peoples, at the Basilica Superiore of St. Francis of Assisi in Italy. Police forensics investigate the death of 7 people in a suspected murder-suicide in Australia. 4 children are among 7 people that were found dead at a rural property in Osmington, near Margaret River. Detectives are investigating the incident, which was said to be treated as a murder-suicide, media reported. 2 firearms were found at the scene, Western Australia police said. Missiles rise into the sky as Israeli missiles hit air defense position and other military bases, in Damascus, Syria. The Israeli military on Thursday said it attacked dozens of Iranian targets in neighboring Syria in response to an Iranian rocket barrage on Israeli positions in the Golan Heights, in the most serious military confrontation between the 2 bitter enemies to date. Iranian MPs burning a U.S. flag in the parliament in Tehran. Iran said it will hold talks with signatories to a nuclear deal after U.S. President Donald Trump's decision to withdraw from the accord, which it branded psychological warfare. President Hassan Rouhani also said Iran could resume uranium enrichment without limit, in response to Trump's announcement. Newly elected Prime Minister of Armenia Nikol Pashinyan addresses the crowd in Republic Square in Yerevan. The leader of protests that gripped Armenia for weeks was named the country's new prime minister on Tuesday, overcoming the immediate political turmoil but raising uncertainty about the longer term. Russian President Vladimir Putin walks before his president inauguration ceremony at the Kremlin in Moscow. Lava from a robust fissure eruption on Kilauea's East Rift Zone consumes a home, then threatens another, near Pahoa, Hawaii. The total number of homes lost within the Lalani Estate subdivision thus far is 21, and geologists from the Hawaii Volcanoes Observatory do not expect the eruption to cease anytime soon. A local state of emergency has been declared after Mount Kilauea erupted near residential areas, forcing mandatory evacuation of about 1,700 citizens from their nearby homes. The crater's floor collapsed on the 1st of May and is since then continuing to erode its walls, and generating huge explosions of ashes. Several earthquakes have been recorded in the area where the volcanic eruptions continue, including a 6.9 magnitude earthquake which struck the area on the 4th of May. Russian police carrying struggling opposition leader Alexei Navalny at a demonstration against President Vladimir Putin in Moscow. Thousands of demonstrators denouncing Putin's upcoming inauguration into a fourth term gathered in the capital's Pushkin Square. Chinese President Xi Jinping speaks at an event to mark Karl Marx's 200th birthday at the Great Hall of the People in Beijing. President Vladimir Putin meets with FIFA President Gianni Infantino in Sochi, ahead of the 2018 World Cup in Russia. Supporters of opposition lawmaker Nikol Pashinyan protest in Republic Square in Yerevan, Armenia. Pashinyan has urged his supporters to block roads, railway stations and airports after the governing Republican Party voted against his election as prime minister. Cubans marched during the May Day rally at Revolution Square in Havana. "The sky is the limit," a Saudi man and woman fly over the Arabian Sarawak Mountains in the first ever joint wingsuit flight in traditional dress. A symbolic leap of faith towards women's empowerment in Saudi Arabia. A general view for the damaged railway station in Al-Qadam neighborhood, after it was recaptured from Islamic State militants, in the south of Damascus. According to media reports, the Syrian army continued the military offensive it has launched earlier this month against militant groups entrenching in southern Damascus and captured several neighborhoods, including Al-Qadam and Al-Asali, and targeting the remnants of armed groups in Al-Hajar al-Aswad and its surrounding in Damascus' southern countryside. Comedian Michelle Wolf attends the celebration after the White House Correspondents' Dinner. Conservatives walked out after Wolf brutally ridiculed President Donald Trump and his aides during her piece. North Korean leader Kim Jong-un and South Korean President Moon Jae-in raised their hands after signing on a joint statement. North Korean leader Kim Jong-un, left, and South Korean President Moon Jae-in raised their hands after signing on a joint statement at the border village of Panmunjom in the demilitarized zone, South Korea. The Korean War will be formally declared over after 65 years, the North and South have said. At a historic summit between leaders Kim Jong-un and Moon Jae-in, the neighboring countries agreed they would work towards peace on the peninsula with a formal end to the conflict set to be announced later this year. The pair agreed to bring the two countries together and establish a peace zone on the contested border. Women hold portraits of their relatives, who were victims of the Chernobyl nuclear disaster, during a commemoration ceremony in Kiev, Ukraine. Rohingya refugees gather in the no-man's land behind Myanmar's border lined with barbed wire fences in Mongda district, Rakhine state bounded by Bangladesh. Myanmar government said on April 15 it repatriated on April 14 the first family of Rohingya out of some 700,000 refugees who have fled a brutal military campaign, a move slammed by a rights group as a PR stunt, ignoring UN warnings that a safe return is not yet possible. President Donald Trump, French President Emmanuel Macron, First Lady Melania Trump and Brigitte Macron hold hands on the White House balcony during a state arrival ceremony in Washington. A boy walks on a pile of garbage covering a drain in New Delhi. Newly ordained priests lie on the floor as Pope Francis leads a mass in St. Peter's Basilica at the Vatican. South Koreans cheer during the welcoming event for the Inter-Korean Summit between South Korea and North Korea in Seoul. The Inter-Korean Summit is scheduled on April 27, 2018 at the Joint Security Area in Panmunjom, agreed by South Korean President Moon Jae-in and North Korea's leader Kim Jong-un. A Palestinian slings a shot by burning tires on the Israel-Gaza border, following a demonstration calling for the right to return. Palestinian refugees either fled or were expelled from what is now the State of Israel during the 1948 war. Outgoing Cuban President Raúl Castro raising the arm of Cuba's new president Miguel Díaz-Canel after he was formally named by the National Assembly, in Havana. A historic handover ending 6 decades of rule by the Castro brothers. The 57-year-old Díaz-Canel, who was the only candidate for the presidency, was elected to a 5-year term with 603 out of 604 possible votes in the National Assembly. Turkey's President Recep Tayyip Erdogan announces early presidential and parliamentary elections for June 24, 2018, at the Presidential Palace, in Ankara. Erdogan announced the snap elections, originally scheduled for November 2019, in a move that will usher in a new political system increasing the powers of the president. He said the new system needed to be implemented quickly in order to deal with a slew of challenges ahead, including Turkey's fight against Kurdish insurgents in Syria and Iraq. European lawmakers raised placards reading, "Stop the War in Syria," in protest against airstrikes launched by the US, Britain and France in Syria last week, criticizing the legitimacy of the operation, as French President Emmanuel Macron delivers his speech at the European Parliament in Strasbourg. Macron is expected to outline his vision for the future of Europe, to push for deep reforms of the 19-nation Eurozone, and will launch a drive to seek European citizens' opinions on the European Union's future. People participate in a protest against the rape of an 8-year-old girl in Kathway near Jammu, and a teenager in Unnao, Uttar Pradesh state, in Bangalore, India. The ruling relies heavily on the actions of commissioners on the CCRC after the couple filed a complaint against Masterpiece Cake Shop. Those commissioners, according to the Monday ruling, disparaged Phillips' faith as despicable and characterized it as merely rhetorical, and compared his invocation of his sincerely held religious beliefs to defenses of slavery and the Holocaust. In addition, the court noted, the commission determined that any message on the cake would be attributable to the customer of the cake, not the baker, even though the CCRC had ruled the opposite way previously when tasked with determining potential discrimination over objections to anti-gay messaging. The neutral and respectful consideration to which Phillips was entitled was compromised here. Mr. Kennedy wrote. The Civil Rights Commission's treatment of his case has some elements of a clear and impermissible hostility towards the sincere religious beliefs that motivated his objection. David Mullins and Charlie Craig approached Masterpiece Cake Shop in Lakewood, Colorado, in 2012, and asked the business to make a cake for their upcoming wedding, which they planned to have in Massachusetts. Mr. Phillips then refused to serve them, saying that he would not use his baking talents to create a message supporting same-sex marriage that runs counter to his religious beliefs on the subject. Mr. Mullins and Mr. Craig argued at the time that they were humiliated by the rejection, and took their complaint to the CCRC. That commission ruled in their favor, as did the Colorado Court of Appeals, which found that Mr. Phillips' right to free speech had not been violated. These are the questions LGBT people are sick of hearing. Gay rights organizations have argued that gay couples should have access to the same services provided to the general public, and that a ruling in favor of Masterpiece Cake Shop would undermine the landmark 2015 Supreme Court decision that made same-sex marriage legal. Meanwhile, religious groups have argued that forcing those with deeply held beliefs against same-sex marriage is akin to forcing individuals to speak, which the Supreme Court has long held is a violation of First Amendment rights. The Trump administration, which intervened on behalf of the baker, welcomed Monday's ruling. The First Amendment prohibits governments from discriminating against citizens on the basis of religious beliefs, Attorney General Jeff Sessions said in a statement. In response to the Monday ruling, the American Civil Liberties Union, which argued the case on behalf of Mr. Mullins and Mr. Craig, said that the courts had actually reaffirmed their core belief that people should have equal access to services provided to the public, even though the court had reversed the decision in this particular case. The court reversed the Masterpiece Cake Shop decision based on concerns unique to the case but reaffirmed its long-standing rule that states can prevent the harms of discrimination in the marketplace, including against LGBT people. Louise Melling, the deputy legal director of the ACLU, said in a statement. In a statement issued after the ruling on Monday, Mr. Phillips, Supreme Court lawyer, praised the decision. Government hostility toward people of faith has no place in our society, yet the state of Colorado was openly antagonistic toward Jack's religious beliefs about marriage. The court was right to condemn that, said Kristen Wagoner, the Alliance Defending Freedom senior counsel who argued Phillips' case.